Hello and welcome back to ABG Sundal Collier's Investor Day. My name is Hanna Forsgren and I work as an equity research analyst here at ABG. With me today I have Lennart Eberle, CEO at Rottneros. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Hanna, and hello everybody. Nice to meet you all again, and from hello possibilities to pure possibilities, as we like to say with Rottneros. And Rottneros is a almost pure play pulp producer for a long time. We have an almost 400-year history in the spot of forest industries. The foundation is back in the 1600s as an iron ore mill, and then through various investments and changes, we today are a pulp company with 2 mills in Sweden, one in Värmland and one north of Stockholm in Hälsingland. We have invested heavily in the late 2015-1800s, where we increased our capacity, utilization rates, as well as quality. And we have widened our scope in our business in 2020 by focusing on raw materials. We do not own any forest for ourselves, but we have increased our sourcing possibilities from private forest owners. 50% of the Swedish forests are in private ownership, and we have now a field organization in place. Since 2006, we already had first ventures into molded pulp or packaging, and that is a development that we have accelerated since the last years, and we are now in the process of increasing our capacity through a joint venture with our major shareholder Arctic Paper in Poland. I will come back to that a little bit later. And we're also now continuing the journey of preparing ourselves for the future and to remain in place going forward. But if we have a quick glance at Rottneros and our operations today, at the top you see our 2 pulp mills. We make long fiber sulfate kraft pulp, which you usually would find in writing and copy paper, which is a segment which is of course declining, but also in packaging filters, which we make at Vallvik, 240,000 tons. We have the Rottneros mill, which is a mechanical pulp mill. So here 95% of the raw material, the wood we take in, becomes pulp. Only 5% is not becoming a sellable product. But on the other side, we have to use a lot of energy to drive the mill and free up the fibers. We used to have 2 lines here, and one was groundwood stone pulp, which is the most traditional way of making pulp, which was usually used in printing and writing and newspaper. And we closed down that line, and we're now in the process of increasing the CTMP production. That's mechanical pulp for example, carton board, liquid packaging board, milk cartons, which is of course a growing segment. Packaging has moved into a new premises a couple of years ago, and now we are ready with the validation of the technology that we are scaling up, and we have our forest operations. And all of these 4 legs together have created a turnover of close to 13 billion Swedish kronor, some 300 million euros. We were 320 employees, and we produced some 400,000 tons of pulp. As of yet, we do not separately account for our packaging operations, but that will come in due course when the Polish plant is up and running. So why should you be investing in Rottneros? Well, the forest industry as such is part of the green transition. It's a circular business model. We start with the forest, we take the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere through the growing forest into our products, and we deliver it then to our customers. We have over the last decade proven a long-term profitability in our operations. We take care of our balance sheet, which is highly robust at this stage, which we feel is important. We create stable shareholder returns. And although we are a small player, we have a very strong position in selected niches where our pulps make contribution to our customers' products and services. Which leads me into the market. And if we look into what has happened on the end-use market for us. Let's have a glance at Europe. Europe is our largest market. Around about 67% of our sales stay in Europe. The market for market pulp, which is pulp producers supplying this market without using it themselves for paper and board production, is around about 65 million tons on a global basis. China is the largest market, the largest single market, but we have a long tradition in Europe, and especially with our niches, we are heavily exposed to the European market. But what we see here is the development that I've touched upon earlier, and the lower part of these bars is the printing and writing segment, which you can see has a structural decline. Digitization makes us using less printed material when we consume books and news, and instead we have a growing part in the board market. So the total European market is around 85 million tons, integrated and non-integrated, and the board segment is growing, and that is where our qualities make a difference. And then there are some other segments at the top, for example, tissue and others, which is also steadily growing. So this is the longer term perspective. This is why we've exited the stone groundwood line, why we are focusing on pulps for packaging, both brown and white and mechanical. If we look at the development during the first 2 months of this year, we can see this is the year-over-year. We can see that the newsprint and graphical market had a tremendous slowdown, as you can see. And that's, again, due to the digitization that is going on. And a lot of this capacity actually is transferred to make packaging grades. So they're not closed, but they changed their focus. And the only segment last year that was growing was the tissue segment. So all in all, it was a 6% decline. If you then look at what happens on the pulp side, and here we can see the first 2 months, this statistics is lagging a little bit behind, but you see a major slowdown in Europe for the first 2 months versus 2022. The first 2 months is there. And we all know the reasons for that. Economical activity has gone down. We're in an environment with increased interest rates. Also, North America had a good start last year, but was slowing down this year. And the one that is not really in line with this is the development in China. In China, we had a very slow 2022, and now we see that that market is picking up. That's the second from the right, where you see a growth here at the beginning of this year. And being the largest market for pulp in the world, China, so to say, sets the tune for how prices are developing. If we look at our deliveries, I talked about that we are specialized niche producers. This is how our sales are distributed by segment from both pulp mills. And also here we follow the trend that we've seen in the European board and paper market, that board is the largest segment by now. Almost 1/3 of our sales is going into board, and this is both to non-integrated board mills, which are not making pulp themselves, but also to integrated pulp board mills, which are both making their own pulp, but for specialty products, they're using our grades or topping up a lack of pulp capacity. Filter, coffee filter is certainly known for most of us, but it's also oil filters and combustion engines or air filters is a segment which serves our fibers very well. There's a lot of porosity that we can supply, so you have the right properties at the filter paper. And also electrical applications, which is a niche and a speciality for our Vallvik mill, has grown quite tremendously over the last years, and here we are focusing and developing the right products to our customers. And then we have some other segments, and as you can see, the printing and writing is decreasing. This is the first quarter of 2023. We had some overhang from the stone groundwood, difficult word, which was sold off stock, and going forward, this segment will further decrease. And that's in line with our long-term strategy and in line with what's happening in the market, despite the fact that it hurts to, of course, close down part of your operations. A new segment that we've now started to list is fiber cement. So in the cement industry, you use all kinds of fibers. Asbestos probably is the most known, but most not environmentally friendly one, to reinforce the concrete construction. And you can also use fibers as a more sustainable solution. And it's quite a big market, which we see a growing demand for our pulps. If we go over to the Q1 results, fairly fresh off the press here at the middle of May. Looking at some highlights, we had a good start into the year, 149 million on the last row on EBIT. That was slightly up from 1 year ago, so it was a very stable and good result. Although we saw that pulp prices have started to come down, but they still are on a very good level. And we can also see that the change in product mix is contributing to our margins. After the quarter, we have continued investing in our operations, taking decisions. We have had a pre-project on the CTMP production. We used to make 80,000 tons a couple of years ago. Through the Agenda 500 project, we brought that up to 125. And now with this investment, we will increase to 165,000 tons. So we will sort of balance out some of the lost production from the groundwood line. That's a project that is started and that will be in place by the autumn of 2024. So there's a 1.5 year lead time. I talked about that we are energy intense. We have hedged our energy position successfully and are leveraging on that going forward, but we also will now start looking into how can we produce some renewable energy ourselves. And here the first step will be a 3 megawatt solar farm in combination with a battery storage. And that initially will be very advantageous when we're looking at how to help the Swedish Kraftnät to balance the frequency rate in the net. And there's quite a good payback on that coming forward. The top point there is referring to our Vallvik mill. We had to reduce our manning at Rottneros after the closure of that pulp line. We looked through our head office and staff functions at the same time last year. And now being in preparation of the downturn we see in the economy, we also have to review the organization at Vallvik without compromising capacity or quality. But that's simply a safeguard measure in order to be prepared of what might happen. If we're looking at the results for the first quarter, coming from last year, 145, I said 249 this year, slightly up. You see there is a large impact by price and currency. The Swedish krona has weakened towards the dollar, and year over year the prices had still improved. We have this mix improvement. Our qualities are the better selling ones. We closed down the lesser profitable ones. But what we see is also that variable costs have increased. That's chemicals, energy driven, but also the wood situation. Fiber cost has gone up, and there is a competition for fiber in Scandinavia, driven mostly maybe from the Ukrainian war that closed down the imports from Russia to Finland on wood. And by that, the Finnish paper and pulp producers had to look elsewhere, and that increased the competition in Sweden. But overall, on the last line, a stable result. We talk about prices a lot, and the pulp market is a cyclical market. Those of you who follow Rottneros are familiar with the top lines. Those are the list prices in Europe for long fiber pulp, both in dollars on the left axle and Swedish kronas on the right axle, the lighter line. But list price is only half part of the story. There's a gross price and there's a rebate, and there's a certain rebate inflation going on. So what we've started to report now are the net prices, which is of course more interesting to follow for the long fiber qualities. And as you would imagine, gross and net prices are following each other, but the gap is widening as there is a rebate inflation every year. That rebate, unfortunately, is increasing, driven by huge consumers of pulp. And if we look at what is driving the pulp, you here see also in the bars the stock values. We had a stock increase at the beginning of 2019, which was bringing prices down, as you could see the curve. And then we had a good demand at the end of 2020 and beginning of 2021. Stocks were down, prices went up to new historical highs, both in gross and net. And now we see that with the slowdown in the economy, stocks have started to increase again to those levels that we've seen back in 2019. And we have come down on the prices here since the peak in October. Nevertheless, if we put the Q1 of 2023 in perspective, it is a very good quarter that we have accumulated here over the last 4 years. And that gives us the confidence that we're doing the right things and how to prepare for the tough times that are going and that are coming. And most important for us here is, of course, our balance sheet and maintaining a solid position. So if we look at the graph first, we see the line, which is our equity over assets ratio. We have a financial target of minimum 50%. We have been above 60% for a long time and close to 66 at the end of last year, beginning of this year. You see the lighter bars that we have a net cash position and also the operational cash flows, which is the darker one. So if we would summarize that, we have an available liquidity at the end of Q1 of 860 million Swedish kronor, which is substantial for a company that has a turnover of 3 billion. And we will have a positive cash flow from our financial derivatives of 156 throughout the course of this year. We hedged our position for all the mechanical pulp production we believed we would have. We took the decision to close down one line. We were long on our futures. We sold those off and locked in the price very much at the peak of electricity pricing during Q4 last year. And this will generate a positive cash flow this year of 156. The annual shareholders meeting decided on a dividend of 214, which was paid out at the beginning of May. And those investments plus the maintenance capex is estimated this year to be some 300 million. So this is very much in the frame of our financial possibilities without jeopardizing anything and still preparing ourselves for the next upturn in the pulp cycle with more capacity at hand and a better position on the energy situation. So if we look briefly at what's going on, pulp is a product of the future. The population in the world is growing. There's more disposable income at hand. This will drive tissue. We have become used to using the internet to shop. We are shipping goods in boxes. The e-commerce is driving fiber consumption. Renewable energy means investments in transformators. Investment in transformators means you need more pulp to do the insulation in a transformator. The energy is going through copper. The copper is isolated by oil and to be cooled off. And then the outer steel frame is insulated through pulp. And we have one of the lowest conductive pulps. And then, of course, everything connected to sustainability. And here we see ourselves being part of that journey by having our molded pulp solutions. And that is what we're doing there. So we developed the technology. We think we are very far ahead in this run. And in order to spread the risk and find a good place to accelerate our capacity and production, we formed a joint venture together with Arctic Paper in Poland. And we're now, during the course of this year, in the means of increasing the capacity there substantially. So if we summarize that on what Rottneros is undergoing right now, we've broadened our scope. We have a strategy on how to source our raw materials by the acquisition of Nyquist. We are building up a third leg in packaging, and we're also maintaining a good position on our core business, the pulp, by investing in CTMP and energy. At the same time, we take the tough decisions that are needed to be cost conscious, closing down less profitable production lines which do not have the same future development on the sales side, and also always controlling our costs. And by that, we think we will maintain our competitiveness. We will do whatever we can to decrease our volatility, coming a little bit away from the pulp cyclicality, and attracting competence, which is, of course, one of the other big issues going forward for everybody in the Western Hemisphere. There is a fight for engineers and economists going on. So if we summarize all of that, stable results through Q1, a very strong balance sheet, which gives us the peace of mind to do the things which are necessary, and a continued transformation of Rottneros to continue to be a sustainable pulp producer, but more than that, be part of the bioeconomy and the circular economy. With that, I thank you for your listening and hand over back to Hanna.
Thank you very much, Lennart, for the presentation. So my first question will be, what will be Rottneros' main focus in 2023?
The main focus will be on delivering on our projects, kicking them off successfully, and finalizing the organizational review in order to make sure that we have our costs under control.
All right. So you decided to close down the roundwood pulp line in 2022, and you will invest in a new CTMP production line. Could you give some more color on the rationale behind these investment decisions, and also elaborate on the timing?
Well, if we start by the rationale, the groundwood pulp was mainly sold to newsprint, and newsprint, as we saw, is a very declining market. So given everything that we can see now going on in the market, we would have had empty order books since the end of last year, which would have cost us a lot of money. So it was really timing-wise the best time to do that. And it was a very old line. So from a maintenance perspective, it would have been difficult and expensive to keep up the standard. It was also very energy intense. It was consuming more energy per ton of pulp than the CTMP. CTMP, on the other side, mechanical pulp, is a growing segment, especially for packaging, liquid packaging, and milk carton applications. We started it off by board decision a couple of weeks ago, and this will have a lead time of 1.5 years. So we believe that we can push the button to have an increased capacity by autumn 2024.
All right. If we're about to picture Rottneros in 2030, how could it look? Will you have more direct packaging exposure by then?
There will be more direct packaging exposure in two ways. One is, of course, by the increased mechanical pulp and continued strategic focus from Vallvik with our NBSK for packaging grades, both white and brown. But of course also through Rottneros packaging. By then, the Polish plant will be fully utilized to some 100 millions, and I think we will see some other factories in the pipeline, if not already materialized by 2030.
So my last question would be, 2022 was a strong financial year for Rottneros in total. For 2023, the input costs remain high, despite some signs of easing, and pulp prices are plunging, especially in China. Could you elaborate on the market outlook and how you find Rottneros' position for the coming years?
I would reiterate our strong balance sheet that we've with us and that we're maintaining, and that we're doing everything we can to safeguard. And as we know, the pulp market is cyclical, and we never really know what's happening other than it goes up and it goes down. And there are a lot of things happening out there which are very difficult to predict. So we'll have to see where the bottom is and when it will turn around. But I'm sure that economical activity will return when people have confidence again that we've seen the top of the interest rate hikes, and there will be a life after tomorrow as well.
Thank you very much, Lennart.
Thank you.
And thank you, the audience.